Ladies and gentlemen, and everything in between, welcome to a new segment called Rambling Responds. In this segment, we will be reading comments, we'll be taking messages from you guys, and responding directly to anything that you might want to query, might want to talk about, absolutely anything. Today, we are going to be responding to a good friend of mine, actually, and a good friend of my Twitch stream, Raven, who has put to us the topic of balancing independence and dependency with her family and friends. She says, I have an interesting relationship with my mother, where sometimes we're fine, but others I want to just bite her head off, literally and figuratively. I would say I am mostly dependent, but I feel like I'll never actually be able to get away from her, hence the autonomy. I'm not sure if it's because of this, but in a lot of past relationships with friends and partners, I put a lot of dependence on them, but don't really open up to it. So generally, I think I put a lot of dependency on other people when it comes to my feelings, while being independent in the way I deal with it, but also can't imagine a way I could actually be fully autonomous from my friends, from my family, whenever relationships, buggering this up, my family and whatever relationships I may have in the future. Yeah, I could have probably put that in a better format, but yeah, that's typically the gist of it. Yeah. So do you have any initial thoughts on that, Jack? Because
My
I
my
know you've gone
initial
through something quite similar recently.
my
Yeah.
my initial my initial response to you, Raven, would be I don't think it's uncommon at all for um for us to have kind of I'm trying to think the best way to put it.
Well,
I think I think
yeah,
as I think as we age and become our own independent people,
yeah,
become individuals would be the best way to put it. That it's not uncommon that we can find that we clash a bit with our parents, and
mm,
I know that me and Dave have spoke about this before in terms of your parents tend to again, speaking from my experience, this is the way that I put it, is that your parents tend to always see you and view you as a child because you are their child. You know, they've brought you into the world. They love you. um Oh, so sorry. In the best case scenario, obviously, it's not everyone's situation, but they tend to love you, have cared for you, and have your best interests at heart. The clash tends to come with when you're your own person, when you're an adult. They still try and parent you,
mm,
and I think sometimes that can cause a clash in the relationship because you almost want something different out of the relationship, but you still get treated like a child, and that, again, speaking from my experience, is where the a lot of frustration can come in, and a lot of clashes can happen, and sometimes you can be not only that they are still treating you like this child, but parents can sometimes have this ability to revert you back into a childlike state, and that can feel very uncomfortable. I don't know if you've got any input on
Oh,
that
I
at all,
do,
Dave.
mate. Because this is
Yeah.
something. This is something that I still struggle with, and I think a lot of people will always struggle, especially those who still live at home with their parents. The place, more or less, where you were probably raised, correct, if I'm right or wrong. But if as long as you're living under their roof,
Yeah.
it will be incredibly difficult to be 100% autonomous. But the thing I would say is that no one is 100% autonomous. We are social creatures for a start. So the idea that anyone could be, we have to go to the shops, we have to buy things, we have someone who, we all have dependencies, right? We all have people
Yeah.
we rely on. So the idea of being 100% autonomous, it's like anything. It's like perfectionism. It's not necessarily, I think, something you want. I don't think it's something that the humans need. I think to be completely autonomous is to be completely outcasted as well, is to be completely almost it's like being in the woods with no one around, like that. Like, and there are people like that obviously do that, but I think
Yeah.
for the average person, for the normal person, we definitely need community. We definitely need to be around people. So I wouldn't put so much pressure on yourself to strive for complete autonomy, for complete independence. I don't think it's something even worth keeping at the front of your mind. I think ideally, as long as you can feed yourself, look after yourself, clothe yourself, you go into uni, I know, right now, so you're doing that. That's a very independent thing to be doing.
Yeah.
But I
A
would
lot of
say,
independence.
yeah, I would say that it, especially living at home, and it's definitely been in my case, you're gonna clash with your parents. You will, because obviously you're coming into an age now where you are going to want more and more independence from them, and they are not, most people anyway, they are still going to have that role, as Jack said, of the parent, of the caregiver.
Mm.
And it's just one of those things that doesn't necessarily shake from a, I guess, from what was probably a good parent, if it was obviously the case. Good parents typically don't just get rid of it. It just sort of sticks around as long as you do, kind of thing. And that's definitely been my case. Um, yeah, it's a tricky one, isn't it?
I
Yeah.
think it also depends on the kind of relationship that you have with your parents. So
Mm,
what I mean by that is,
yeah.
uh, for example, is it a possibility, or is your mother somebody that you can sit down with and actually talk about this with her?
Mm,
Because that's the that's in my opinion the most effective way to deal with any issues in a friendship or a relationship
yeah.
is, I ask myself, can I sit down with this individual, again, for me it's, can I sit down with this individual and talk calmly without reverting back to a childlike state when they
Yeah.
potentially go into parent mode. So I would say a lot of it falls down to, can I keep my cool and discuss this through with the individual, and find a common ground, and find a solution to the issue that is presented. Now, unfortunately for me, with one of my parents, I have come to terms with the fact that there is never going to be um, the opportunities to sit down and talk through things, because they just don't have that ability, unfortunately, and it always turns into me being in the wrong and me being scorned. So again, for me, and this is, I can't express enough. I'm not saying in any way for you to cut ties with your parents. Please don't do anything like that. But unfortunately for me on my journey, and this is over many, many years, I've come to realize that because there can't be that sit down and communication and healthy chat, that I've had to kind of cut ties a little bit, which is really sad. And I would hate for that to ever be the case with anyone else and their parents. But unfortunately, sometimes in extreme circumstances, that is what has to happen if the relationship is no longer healthy, and that if both sides can't be respected. So I'd like to think that you're able to sit down and just have a discussion about it, because whether it's a parent or a friend or a partner, that's always, in my opinion, the best way to deal with these things, and find some common ground. And that often can really release a lot of stress and pressure that you might be feeling, especially
Mm,
if you've got big things happening in your life, such as moving to university, which I'm sure also is probably creating a little bit of anxiety, or potentially creating a little bit of anxiety for your parents, because you know their girl's going off into the big wide world. And I think from a parental point of view, that could be a daunting thing.
mm. Absolutely. I think we should break this down a little bit more as well, because it goes into,
Yeah.
obviously, she talks about, I'm not sure if it's because of this, but a lot of past relationships with friends and partners, I put a lot of dependency on them, but don't really open up to it. So,
Yeah.
yeah. I don't
So
know. Yeah, go on.
that don't really open up to it. What I'm just trying to grasp what that means.
Generally, I
S-
think I put a lot of dependency on other people when it comes to my feelings, while
yeah.
being quote unquote independent in a way. In a way, I deal with it, but I also can't imagine a way I would actually be fully autonomous from my family, whatever relationships I may have in the future. So
So is the struggle there that
I guess,
she's not
yeah,
expressive of her feelings in a
it's
relationship, or
it seems that I would say, from what I
mm,
can understand, it seems that emotionally she is reliant on these people in her life,
okay.
but obviously strives to be an independent individual, but finds it hard to obviously be in control and of her own emotions and allow herself to regulate them rather than rely on other people for her emotional well-being, I guess. So,
Okay.
like looking for that maybe in a partner and then putting it onto them, for instance. So
Right, I've got you. Okay.
yeah, and that's
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, I get that.
Go on.
Sorry, I
I
interrupted you
was
there.
gonna
Go
say,
on.
and Raven, you're quite, you're young as well. Like this is the thing. This will come with time. Putting it can be very easy to get into relationships, and it's a very emotional, situation. It's all emotional. You fall for this individual, you like this individual, and it can be so easy, very quickly to just obviously depend on them for your emotional stability, and obviously put that onto them. I would say that this is something that again, I struggle with, and I think every human out
Mm,
there will definitely struggle with, especially in initial phases of relationships when you're just so emotionally tender to the individual.
yeah.
That honeymoon period, you just like, you want to speak to them and you want to talk to them and you just want to know everything about them, and it definitely is hard to claw that back sometimes, and obviously just remember that you are your own person. You were in existence before them, and you will be
Mm.
most likely after them, right? So
I
yeah,
think it can be, and this is thinking back again. Obviously, currently I've been with my partner for 9 years, but thinking
mm,
back to younger years and previous relationships, it can be very overwhelming. That kind of
yeah,
honeymoon period. There's a lot of feelings and emotions floating around. It's exciting.
yeah,
You're almost you can be kind of craving their attention and
mm,
really like checking your phone every 5 seconds for a response because you're just so almost infatuated that and so happy that this person likes you back.
mm,
Which that in itself, can push some people away.
yeah,
Um, I personally think it's and again, it's important, and you brought this up, Dave, that if you're young, it's important to try to not over stress about this stuff because i- you learn as you go with everything in life. You will learn as you go, and I'm sure that there'll be heartbreaks and there may be breakups and get back together, and there's so much more that you've got to experience. um
mm,
but the bottom line is, I think it's important to remember who you are as a person and kind of build your own, um what you expect from a relationship, and then also ask yourself, is it realistic what I'm expecting of another person in a relationship, and just to ask
mm,
the questions really. And not only to yourself but with the person that you're involved in a relationship with. If you can, the more you can talk things through without getting into conflict or arguments, the more that relationship is going to blossom and grow, because it's in those hardships that we strengthen relationships, if that makes sense.
yeah. And I think this brings up a very valuable question and a very
Mm,
valuable topic, and that is, how much do we need to have had figured out before we get into these intimate relationships? I feel like it's one of those, isn't it? If you are a perfectionist, you strive for this idea of perfection in your life, and people tell you, well, you have to have your shit figured out before you even consider a relationship. Well, it's like in
yeah.
some cases, that notion of having everything figured out, can be a quite literal thing, can't it? And then people just never feel like they're even capable of romance or pushing themselves into a
Absolutely.
relationship, right?
And to that, I would say absolutely do not worry about feeling like you have to have everything
Yeah.
figured out before you get into a relationship. Because when the right relationship comes along, and here is the kind of pinnacle of this conversation, I would say,
Mm,
when the right relationship comes along, that person will not only accept you for all of the things that they already love about you and like about you, but, and this is the most important thing, they will also accept you for your faults, and that you will work on that together
mm,
as a partnership. And this, unfortunately, is something that seems to be like almost like a lost art these days. And we touched on this in another episode of, sometimes it seems like you've got to tick all of my boxes,
mm.
and if
Yeah.
you don't tick one of those boxes, I'm going to forget about these 10 positive things that you bring to the table, and I'm going to go and find somewhere else. You are never, ever going to find somebody that is 100% perfect in all aspects of their being and all aspects of their life. It is a completely and utterly unrealistic and flawed expectation, because we are human beings and we are not perfect. We are not perfect organisms, right? We are flawed. We make mistakes. That is the whole point of life, and it is the whole point of growth, that we will make mistakes, and hopefully we will be able to reflect, admit when we've made a mistake, and then, and this is the most important part, learn how we can improve from those mistakes, so
Mm,
that next time a situation comes along, or or something happens, we can reflect,
yeah.
learn from it, and improve, and then move on. And ideally, in a relationship, that's what happens together. You may well argue, but if you can then have that little break and then come back to each other, and again, this is just speaking from my perspective. What happens with me is, once in a blue moon, me and my partner will have a bit of a to do. We'll have a fallout, and it'll be all like, bugger off kind of thing. And then we'll have probably at most now like 10 to 20 minutes away from each other. And then it'll be coming back downstairs, and it'll be like, do you want a cup of coffee? And everything will be absolutely fine again. We'll settle down, and then we'll talk about it. And
Mm,
that's it. It's really as simple as that. But the clash is when it's a constant, banging of heads together.
mm.
No, I'm right and you're wrong, and blah blah blah, and that doesn't get anyone anywhere.
Yeah.
Um, so relationships are a difficult thing. They are, but that's the whole point. You get to figure stuff out together. You get to grow stronger from it, and then before you know it, you're a much more solid foundation.
And I think,
So
yeah.
I was just gonna say,
Go on. Yeah.
just to wrap up from my end before I pass on to Dave, don't be so hard on yourself.
Yeah.
Just take it one step at a time.
Absolutely. And to wrap it up on my end as well, no pun intended. Um, Independence is a skill. Everything we've discussed today is something that could be diluted straight into just skill. It is just
Mm,
things you learn through life. You are young, you're still a teenager. These will be things that just you will naturally improve on as your life goes on. And I don't know about you, Jack, at the age of 19, I was not this self aware. I was not this
no, not at
introspective.
all.
And I did not have this level of compensation when it came to obviously looking at my relationships and my family life and my friends. I never had this. I never had this till bloody 25, my mid 20s. So
Absolutely.
it is definitely just about not being hard on yourself.
Yeah. If
Trying
I
come.
No, sorry, I was just gonna say, if I put 19-year-old Jack in front of you,
Yeah.
you would literally think it was a completely, a different person
Yeah.
altogether. So,
Yeah.
because yeah, time is a great kind of healer, and opportunity to grow and things like that.
And obviously, as we said, in relation to obviously the stuff going on at home with your parents, the best thing to do is just try and talk about how you feel. Just try and obviously have a sit down, discuss
Mhm.
these things one on one directly, and do it in a way that puts you on their level, because that's what you want to be, right? You want to show them that you are also not only their child, but your own person who is looking for their autonomy. So
Mm.
talking to them as an adult is obviously something that you would want to obviously try and do. It can be quite hard for parents to accept that, granted, but
Yeah.
you can only try, and if they don't reciprocate that, then unfortunately we can't change how others will receive our our messages and our thoughts and feelings. But give it a try, and obviously don't be too hard on yourself. Keep improving. Yeah,
Absolutely.
sounds good.
Awesome. Should we wrap it up there?
That sounds good, Raven. Hope you got something for this. And if anyone else has any more questions or anything they would like to submit to us, be sure to leave it in the comments. Hit that subscribe, hit the like if you enjoyed this response. And yeah, we'll see you guys in the next episode. Appreciate
Thank
it.
you, Raven.
Take care,
Peace.
guys. Bye.